y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. The title of today's video, you can tell that this is going to be my April wrap-up, and y'all, this was a very interesting reading month. I'm so surprised that I even read as many books as I have. Now, I've only read I think like 9 books, and that probably doesn't sound like that much to you, but to me that is a lot, especially considering how busy April was. But for the most part, I did have some bangers, and some of these books have made it onto my favorites list of the year, and I'm really happy about that. That like always makes me so overjoyed when I like go through a reading month and I'm like, yep, you're gonna go on my favorites list, and you and you and you. So yeah. I am going to start off with my lowest rated books and then work my way up to the highest rated books of the month. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started. The first book that I have here is sitting at a 2.75, basically a 3-star read, and it is the first book in the Gossip Girl series written by Cecily von Seisiger. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce her last name. This is my lowest rated book of the month. And I'm not going to get into my full thoughts about this book because I actually filmed an entire reading vlog where I read the first book in the Gossip Girl series because it is my favorite TV show of all time. But if you are a fan of Gossip Girl, I definitely recommend checking out my reading vlog. I will leave it linked up above or down below in the description box. But yeah, this wasn't my favorite read. Very problematic, very outdated, which makes sense because this came out in 2003, but you know, I feel like we could have did a little bit better. I don't know. But anyways, definitely make sure you guys check out that vlog so that way you can get my full thoughts on this book. Okay, so now moving on to my solid slash like concrete 3-star reads. And the first book that I have in this category is The Violence by Delilah S. Dawson. So I mentioned in previous videos that this book was a highly anticipated read for me. I was so excited to read this book and to see what it was going to give, and unfortunately it just fell a bit flat for me. This story actually follows a family, more specifically Chelsea and her 2 kids, Ella and Brooklyn, as well as Chelsea's mother. And so Chelsea unfortunately is trapped in this abusive marriage and she's looking for a way out, but she hasn't found a way to escape yet, until one day an epidemic known as the violence sweeps the nation. So essentially the violence is a virus that one can contract, and when you do contract the violence, you will have these sudden bursts of animalistic rage where you will attack anyone or anything in your path, and you won't stop until you kill that thing or that person. So while this is happening, Chelsea devises this plan where she's going to use the violence to her advantage to try to escape her abusive husband once and for all. So the plot sounds really interesting, right? Yeah, I know. It sounds really interesting. It sounds like it's going to be really gripping. It sounds like it's going to be very horrific and terrifying, which in a lot of instances it was. And before I get into the reasons as to why I didn't really care for this book, I did want to at least start out by like highlighting the things that I did enjoy. So I really like the overall messages and the overall symbolism when it comes to this book. This is considered a feminist novel, and the author Delilah S. Dawson actually wrote this pretty much from the heart. Delilah and her mother were actually in an abusive household at the hands of Delilah's father. So a lot of what Chelsea is going through can really be taken from Delilah's own experiences. So I really did enjoy like that part of the story, like the commentary on domestic violence and just how a lot of the times women aren't believed or taken seriously, or don't really have the necessary resources or access or really support system to escape situations like this. So I really did like that part of the book, and I also really enjoyed the overall commentary when it comes to the patriarchy and just how women have to move throughout the world as a woman, essentially. So I really did like all of those themes incorporated in the book. Now moving on to the things that I didn't really care for. So the first thing that I didn't really like is the fact that this book doesn't, to me, have a fair balance of focusing on the horrific nature of the virus known as the violence, as well as focusing on Chelsea and her family and her journey. I felt like we only got like bits and pieces of how horrifying and terrifying the violence could actually get or be, when I felt like this book was really marketed and really selling itself on the fact that like this is going to be like a horror novel in a sense, where like again like the virus is going to be like the main focus of the plot, and in certain instances it was, but it really was more so about Chelsea's journey and her getting out of a shitty situation. I do appreciate the commentary and the symbolism when it comes to that. If we could have just had a little bit more of a fair balance on focusing on the violence and how scary and terrifying that is, and Chelsea's journey. That's all I'm saying. Now, it could just be a me thing, but I just felt like the way that this book was marketed to me, it was really relying on like the violence aspect, you know? And then the other thing that I didn't really care for about this book was the second half. I felt like in the beginning and in the middle, I was really invested, I was really like gripped, and I was hooked, and I really wanted to know what was going to happen next. So I was turning the pages. But once we got to part 2/part 3, I just felt like the story got a little bit unserious and silly. I don't want to give too much away because I feel like it could be a spoiler, but I will just say that there is amateur/professional wrestling involved. And I just felt like because of that plot point, because it became became a huge focus of the story, it just kind of made it a little bit unserious for me. And again, it took me out of it, and I wasn't as invested in the characters or the story as I was in the beginning of the book. And another thing that I will say is that this book is just too long. I feel like we really could have cut down on some of the pages, especially when we got to the wrestling part. It just didn't need to be that long. So I ended up switching to the audiobook about halfway through, and I really did enjoy the audiobook as well as the narrator. Really happy that I did switch to it, because if I didn't, I don't think I would have finished this in April, you guys. I'm telling you right now. But yeah, unfortunately this just wasn't my favorite read, and it did get a 3-star for me. But I am going to unhaul this book, and I'm hoping that whoever picks it up next really does enjoy it a lot more than I did. Now moving on to the last 3-star read of the month, and it is Watching You by Lisa Jules. So y'all, this is actually my second Lisa Jules book ever that I have ever read. The first Lisa Jules book that I have read was Then She Was Gone, and that was the book that actually got me into thrillers and what sparked my love for thrillers. And I feel like that is one of the most like basic like thriller books to say is what got you into thrillers, but it's the truth. I feel like that book was a good segue slash like beginner book into thrillers in my opinion. And I'm noticing with Lisa Jules books, at least with maybe her earlier works, I feel like that's the case for like a lot of them. But this book is actually kind of hard to describe because there are so many characters in here that you kind of have to keep up with. So I am just going to read the back of it just to make it easier for you and for me. But right here it says, someone knows what you did. Melville Heights is one of the nicest neighborhoods in Bristol, England. It's not usually the sort of place where people are murdered in their own kitchens, but it is the sort of place where everyone has a secret and prying eyes lurk behind every curtain. So who has been murdered, and who would have wanted one of their neighbors dead? That is pretty much the synopsis, and like I said, this does follow a lot of characters because it is called Watching You. So pretty much everybody in this town called Melville Heights is watching each other, like whether it's through like their windows or just like watching them, like literally outside standing out front of their houses and watching them. It's actually crazy how everyone is pretty much a stalker in this story. Like I mentioned, I did give this a 3-star. Overall, I enjoyed this and I had a fun time reading it, and I still love Lisa Jules. Like despite this only being the second book that I read by her, I really enjoy her novels, and I enjoy the fact that she is just like known as one of the queen of thrillers because she just like does something different with her stories. Even though her thrillers are slow burn, I still find myself like really interested and invested in wanting to know what happens next. And I can't say the same for a lot of slow burn thrillers that I have read recently. But when it comes to her, I just feel like I can actually like sit through her stories and not want to DNF them. So that's a point in my book. But yeah, the reason why I gave this 3 stars isn't because I didn't enjoy the story or that I thought the writing style was bad. Honestly, it was just because I'm an avid thriller reader and I read a lot of intense and fast-paced thrillers. I just felt like this book was very predictable, and I was able to guess like the major plot twist and the killer reveal pretty early on. So I definitely think that this book is better suited for someone who is looking to get into thrillers or just doesn't know where to start. I definitely think Lisa Jules is like a great author to recommend to beginner thriller readers, because if I would have read this like back when I read Then She Was Gone, I would have been like, whoa, mind blown. I would have been like, this is the greatest thriller that I've ever read. And I'm sure if I reread Then She Was Gone, I probably would look at that in a different light and be like, what was all the hype about? But at the time, that book was amazing. Either way, I had a great time reading it. I thought it was really fun, and I really enjoyed the like journey that I was taken on when reading this book, because it was so fascinating to read about everyone in this town literally stalking one another and not realizing it, or realizing it and just not caring. Like it was actually insane. I will say that the ending was actually like crazy. I will say that, like it didn't like fully like shock me like, oh my goodness, like this is innovative or anything like that, but it definitely did make me kind of like, ooh, okay Lisa, like I see you, I see you. So I definitely will be picking up more Lisa Jules books, and I really need to make sure that I like read her books regularly, because I read Then She Was Gone back in like 2018, 2019 or whenever it came out, and I haven't read a Lisa Jules book since, and I just think that's a hot mess, because honestly she's so well regarded in the thriller space. But also I feel like I can say that she's going to be a favorite thriller author of mine. Despite some of her earlier works being beginner friendly, I still feel like she's going to be a favorite thriller author of mine, because she just has a way with surprises and twists that is different and sets her apart from other thriller authors. Like I don't know how to describe it. I actually watched one of Kayla's reading vlogs where she read I think authors that she was giving like a second or third chance to, and Lisa Jules was in her video, and I feel like what she said about Lisa Jules' writing style and how she just leaves something ominous on the last page of every chapter, and how she just like has those like ominous sentences within her story, and like she gives you enough but not like too much at the same time. I feel like Kayla encapsulated my thoughts very well in that video when it comes to Lisa Jules. So definitely check out her video if you're interested in like really learning more about Lisa Jules and like kind of her writing style. But yeah, overall I enjoyed this one, and I definitely will be picking up more by her. I think I'm going to try to read The Night She Disappeared next, because everyone talks about the book and raves about it, and I need to know what happened because I feel like I'm missing out. Okay, so the next book that I have in this category is The Push by Ashley Audrain. So y'all, It finally happened. Your girl finally read the push. Finally. It took me like 20 years to read this book. This has been sitting on my TBR cart for so long, but I finally got around to reading it because I told you guys I was going to read it in April, and I did just that. Put some respect on my name, okay? Put some respect on my name. But yes, I finally read The Push by Ashley O'Drain, and so I'm not going to get into the full synopsis of this book because I feel like this is one of those thrillers where it's just better if you don't know too much, so that way you're really like shocked by everything that happens in this book. But I will say that this does follow a woman slash mother named Blythe, and Blythe actually has 2 children. She has a daughter, and then she ultimately ends up having a son. But with the daughter, she doesn't feel a connection to her at all. She feels like her daughter actually doesn't even really like her, and honestly Blythe is contemplating on if she even likes her daughter herself. So her and her daughter just don't really get along, but Blythe actually ends up having a second child, which is a son, and her son becomes her entire world, and her son actually bond and like connect right off the bat. And the story takes a sinister turn from there. I'm not going to say anything else because like I said, you should just go into this not knowing too much. And this book and the chapters are really short, but yes, this book was a crazy ride, and I'm mad that y'all didn't tell me that this book was going to be as wild as it was, because holy shit, I have never read a book like this and I can't stop thinking about it. Like, even though I didn't give this a 5-star, I still think about this book to this day. Like, just certain things, certain chapters, certain thoughts and feelings that Blythe would express, I'm just like, ooh, like it makes me shudder. It gives me goosebumps, you know? So starting with the things that I enjoyed about this book, I really liked the commentary on motherhood and just how it's not all rainbows and roses and unicorns all of the time. I really love the fact that more and more women are speaking out and talking about their experiences, their real and raw and like gritty experiences, and what it's like to be a mother. I feel like a lot of the times, you know, in media and just like on social media in general, it's just like really taboo to talk about like the hardships that come along with motherhood, and people only focus on the positives, which is great because yes, like I'm sure being a mother and having a child is one of life's greatest joys, I'm sure, but mothers need to have a space where they can really talk about how not all of the time are they happy, not all of the time they want to get out of bed and, you know, have to be the caregiver for somebody. Like, so I really like the fact that this book really shined a light on that, and it also shined a light on postpartum depression as well as depression in general and anxiety. And also I really like the commentary on how a lot of the times women and mothers have to go above and beyond to be known as, you know, Wonder Woman or Supermom, whereas dads can kind of just like do the bare minimum and like they get all this praise and recognition, when if the mother was to do the bare minimum it would be a problem, you know what I mean? So I just really liked all of the commentary that Ashley O'Drain really presented into this book, because it's needed. We need more books like this, and we need more books to really like be in our faces and tell us like, hey, yes, it's great, but there are also some issues with it as well, and you need to listen to the women and the mothers that go through these experiences, because that's the only way that we can provide adequate resources, support systems, etc. So I just really loved this book for that aspect alone, and honestly this book has just put so many things into perspective for me when it comes to my own thoughts on motherhood. I'm not going to get into full detail here because I just feel like it's not needed and it's not necessary. Just know that a lot of my fears were confirmed in this book. I will just say that. So moving on to the things that I didn't necessarily care for. I do not like second person, y'all. I do not like the second person writing style. I understand why people do it and I understand why it's needed in certain instances, but I just don't like it. It throws me off sometimes, and it really, to me, slows down the reading process, because I really have to take my time and really like get into the story, you know what I mean, and put myself in the story, because that's what the author is doing. It's literally pulling you into the story, but you yourself as a reader have to make sure that you are like in that mindset, ready to be like fully immersed and engrossed in the story. And there were a lot of times where I had to keep restarting and rereading certain chapters and certain sentences because it just was not clicking for me. So I decided to actually switch to the audiobook, and I'm so happy that I did that, because it was just easier for me to, I feel like, digest the story because I was having it narrated to me. And once I really got into the audiobook, I was locked in and I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. So I think if you're struggling with the writing style, I definitely think you should go the audiobook route, because the narrator for that was phenomenal in my opinion. I thought it was just really nice to have someone that was narrating it to you and like telling you, you know, this is what's going on with you, with your relationship, with you being a mother, etc, etc. So yeah, that was honestly really the only thing I guess that I didn't really care for about the story, was just the writing style. So maybe I could have bumped it up to a 4.5, but I don't know. I haven't written my review on this yet, so maybe I will bump this up to a 4.5. I'm not 100% sure, but that really was the only thing that I didn't care for about the story, was the writing style in the beginning. I will just say that make sure you look up trigger warnings for this book. I'm not a mother yet myself, but I can imagine how triggering and how upsetting this book could be for someone that is. So definitely make sure you look those up, because this book is really, really intense and very, very sad. When I got to the incident that took place, if you guys read this book, then you know what I'm talking about. When I got to the actual incident, I literally said out loud, oh my God. Like, I literally was like, oh no, like it was heartbreaking, and also just so wicked and so sinister that I was not expecting that. I definitely understand why this is some people's favorite books and why this made it onto so many favorites lists of 2021, because this is the type of book that you will be thinking about for a long time. Whether you are a mother or not, you will be thinking about it and these characters. And also the last sentence, I finally know what you guys are talking about. The last sentence of this book, where's the sequel? Where's the sequel, Ashley O'Drain? Where is it? Where's the epilogue? Because I need that. And the last book that I have in this 4-star category is a classic, and it is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So I have told you guys in my previous videos that I was really trying to get back into classics, and I just haven't really felt motivated to pick up any recently, which really breaks my heart, because I do enjoy classics and I feel like I enjoy them a little bit more than some other people. I've really been missing them, but again, I just haven't felt motivated to pick them up. So I decided to try to inch my way back into the space, and doing so by picking up a shorter one. And so I decided to read Their Eyes Were Watching God, and I'm really happy that I did, because like I said, I did give this a 4 out of 5 star, and I really enjoyed this story for what it was. So this actually follows a light-skinned black woman named Janie who lives in the South, I'm pretty sure, and you pretty much just follow her throughout this entire story, going through the ups and downs of life and just trying to navigate it and keep her head up as best as she can. Honestly, that message and that synopsis right there is what really drew me into this book in the first place, because I'm always looking for stories where people, no matter what age they are just trying to figure out life and also just trying to roll with the punches and make lemonade out of lemons, you know? And that's what this book gave to me, and I really do love it. I know I gave it a 4-star, but just know that I really did love this book. I just like couldn't give it a 5-star just because of my own weird rating system, but like I really did enjoy the story, and I did tab it up because there were just certain things in here that made me laugh out loud, that moved me, or that just really made me think and sit back and say, I really liked that line. So starting with Zora Neale Hurston herself, I love her prose and her writing style. I definitely understand why so many people that are into classics, and specifically like Black classic readers, love her and her work, because her prose is absolutely stunning. I tabbed so many of her quotes and just so many things that she had Janie say, because her writing was just beautiful. And on the back of the book here, I love this edition, by the way. This is the 75th anniversary edition. I got this from Target, but on the back here there is a quote, and it's one of the most like famous quotes from the book, and it says, Janie saw her life like a great tree in leaf, with the things suffered, things enjoyed, things done and undone. Dawn and doom was in the branches. Beautiful. Like, I actually got goosebumps from that. So yeah, I just really enjoyed the writing overall, and I really loved the fact that Zora Neale Hurston included like that raw Southern dialect as well as AAVE all throughout the book, especially during this time. This was obviously written back in like the 1900s, so for her to write this book and to include all of that dialect in here, knowing that it probably wasn't going to be taken seriously by the general like public, was so like inspiring and brave. And I just love that. I love that she was like, I don't really care if you guys don't talk like this, or if you guys don't understand dialect like this. This is how the Black community talks, and I'm going to write it in a book, period. So I just really love the fact that she didn't care and she included it all throughout the book, and it just felt so authentic. I just really enjoyed that part of the story. So I will say that if you do have trouble with the dialect, then I definitely recommend maybe picking up an audiobook if you can find one. But yeah, overall I was able to follow along really well. Another thing that I just really loved about the dialogue too, and just the cast of characters, is that even in the face of despair, even in the face of adversity and just going through tumultuous and troubling times, Black humor will always find a way to shine. There were so many instances in here where everybody was pretty much down on their luck and going through it, child. Like, they were going through it, but they still found a way to crack jokes, to bid, and just to make each other laugh and smile. And I love that. I love that so much. Again, it's just a testament to the Black spirit and like resilience. So yeah, I really enjoyed all those aspects of the book. And one last thing that I will say is that I just really like the fact that Janie's happiness was her own, period. Janie was content with her life and the people that she came across in her life, whether they caused her pain or not. Janie, I felt like, still took everything in stride and still appreciated everything that she went through, because it turned her and made her into the woman that she became to tell us this story in the first place. So I just really like the fact that, again, she was able to make lemonade out of lemons, and she was happy regardless. Like she found her own happiness and it worked for her. So I just really liked all of those overall messages and themes within this book, and I'm going to be thinking about this one probably for a long time. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this should be another book that's bumped up to a 4.5 star, because with me going on about how much I just loved the themes and the writing and just Janie as a character herself, it's giving 4.5 star. So you know what, we're gonna bump this up to a 4.5 star. I'm gonna change my review on Storygraph, and I'm gonna change it, like the star rating in my Bookstagram post. But yeah, 4.5 star. I loved it. Great book. Okay, and now moving on to the 5-star books of the month. So I actually have 3 books in this category, and y'all, they were so good. They were all so good, and like I said, they all pretty much made it. They all made it onto my favorites list of the year, period. Like, I love them. So the first book that I have in this pile is Hook, Line, and Sinker by the queen, the legend, the icon, Tessa Bailey. Okay, 5 out of 5 stars. Y'all already knew what it was. Y'all already knew what it was, because you guys know how much I love Tessa Bailey as an author and just how much I love her stories. This one was no exception. So this is actually a sequel slash follow-up to It Happened One Summer, which is Tessa Bailey's first book in the series. And so this book actually follows Piper's sister Hannah, as well as Brendan's best friend named Fox. So after the first book, Hannah actually goes back to her and Piper's hometown in LA. And so Hannah is actually a production intern or assistant on this movie set, because she is looking to break into the film industry, and she really wants to be a music supervisor for films. So she wants to curate like specific soundtracks to films, and so she decides to take up this position as a production intern or assistant, and she's working on this movie. And they're going through, and while they're going through the filming process of this movie, the director starts to have second thoughts about the location. It says to the team that he feels as though the location that they've been filming in is all wrong, and that he is not happy about it, and that he wants to look for another location. And this really pisses off the staff, because they're already like halfway through this movie and the budget has pretty much already been spent. But Hannah saves the day, and she pretty much recommends the town of Westport, so where Brendan, Piper, and Fox live, to film this movie, so that way they can get more of a rugged and rural feel to the actual location in the movie itself. The director loves that idea, and so they all decide to jet set off to Westport. You follow Hannah and Fox falling back into their old routines, and their friendship starts to bloom into something more, and the story takes off from there. Like I mentioned, 5 out of 5 stars. I thought this was a beautiful, stunning, steamy, and just overall romantic book, and I just love Hannah even more than I did when I read about her in It Happened One Summer. I loved her character in that book, and I just always felt as though she was such a kind and loving and caring person, and she was a great sister to Piper, and she always looked out for her. But this book really made me look at her, of course, in her own light, and really showed me that she is a great character and she deserves the world. I really loved Hannah's passion for all things music, and you could tell that like music was her life, and that this is something that she wanted to do for the rest of her life, was just to curate the perfect soundtracks to any situation. So envious of people that have that talent or have that knack for just like knowing what songs go to which situations. Like, I'm so jealous. Like, teach me your ways. But I really love that part of the story. I'm really glad that Tessa Bailey really spent time in the book to talk about that when it came to Hannah's character. I'm a character driven person when it comes to my book, so I didn't find an issue with this, but I could understand why this could be a certain pain point for people that are more plot driven than character driven. So just keep that in mind. But overall, loved Hannah's character. One thing that I didn't like, and this isn't really even about Hannah, it's more so about everybody else. I felt as though because Hannah was looked at as Piper's kid sister, a lot of people felt as though she was like a little bit more immature than what she really was, and people felt like she couldn't handle like the honest truth, which was really odd, because I felt like Hannah was able to control her emotions pretty well, and I felt like when she was presented with conflict, she handled it pretty well, and she was able to like give a great solution. Like I just told you guys in the synopsis, she was the one that came up with going to Westport in the first place. So like Hannah works really well under pressure, and she works really well in stressful situations. So for people to act like she was some fragile doll that like if you told her the honest truth or if you presented her with a conflict, she would like spiral, I didn't really like that, and I didn't understand that. But I think that goes back to the fact that like she is looked at as Piper's kid sister, so people just want to protect her, which is fine, but like get a grip, you know, get a grip. And then moving on to Fox, loved him. I loved me some Fox, okay? Like I genuinely loved him. He was so sweet, so caring, and you could tell that he was head over heels for Hannah, even though he tried to act like he wasn't. And I just love that. I love when characters in romance books try to act like that they don't like another character, of course, when in reality they know for a fact that they do. Like everyone with a pulse knows that they like that character. And I just love that he kept saying to himself, like, why do I care if she's on a date with this guy? She's my friend. And it's like, dude, you know why you care. We know why you care. So I just really thought he was funny in that regard, but I love Fox's character so much. You could tell that he was very protective over Hannah, like fiercely protective over her, and just wanted her to be happy and wanted the best for her. Overall, I thought that this book was so cute, so steamy. I will say that it was very steamy, and I just really love the fact that this book made me fall in love with the Bellinger sisters in a unique and refreshing way. Like, It Happened One Summer will always be my #1, and I love Piper so much, but this book just made me fall in love with both of them, but especially Hannah, in a different way. And it was just really nice to be able to like get transported back into Westport and like see what these characters are up to now. One thing that I also wanted to say was that this book honestly restored my hope in friends to lovers romances. I have never been the biggest fan of friends to lovers. I'm so sorry. I just feel like it's kind of boring, and I don't know, I need some angst. I need some tension in my romance books. So that's why I'm a huge fan of enemies to lovers, because like I need that extra oomph, you know? And I just feel like you never get that with friends to lovers. But here, it really restored my hope, and it made me look at it in a different light and made me realize like, maybe I do like it to an extent, or maybe I just need to find the books that have this type of chemistry, you know? Because I felt like Hannah and Fox's chemistry as friends was just as good and compelling as their chemistry in a romantic light, you know? I love the fact that they were like best friends, but they were also lovers at the same time. I thought it was really cute. It was very authentic and really compelling, again, in my opinion. I will continue to buy anything that Tessa Bailey writes. She's coming out with another book in the summer. I think it's called My Killer Vacation or something like that. Best believe that I already pre-ordered it, okay? Like, I already pre-ordered it because I need to read everything that this woman has ever written, because she is just so good at romance. She's so good at romance. She doesn't make it cringe. She doesn't make the characters cringe. It don't get no better than this. It don't get no better than this. I'm sorry. Like, Tessa Bailey is my girl. Y'all know this. Also, this book has an epilogue, and you guys know that I am the queen of epilogues. One of the best epilogues I have ever read in my life. You get a glimpse into not only Hannah and Fox's life post this book, but you also get a glimpse into Brendan and Piper's life, and y'all, it was beautiful. Like, I actually teared up at how cute this story ended. Like, it ended on such a sweet and positive and wholesome note that I didn't want it to end. I know it has to come to an end, you know, but I just loved the epilogue. I appreciate Tessa Bailey for writing it, because she did that for me. So thank you so much for writing this epilogue. And I just love when authors take the time to write an epilogue, because they know that like some of us really want to know what happens to our faves next and what is in store for them. So yeah, overall, love this book. It Happened One Summer is still my #1, but this is a beautiful sequel and follow-up, and I definitely think that it lived up to the hype and it met its match with It Happened One Summer. And the second to last book that I have in this category is Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. So I finally decided to dive into the world of a basketball sports romance, and I finally decided to dive into the world of Kennedy Ryan. And y'all, why did it take me so long to read this book? I have no idea. It was so good. Gut-wrenching, tragic, scary, terrifying, but it was beautiful. Love story that was able to blossom from it, but also just the two main characters, August and Iris themselves, were just beautiful characters that I just wish were real, okay? So I'm not going to read the full synopsis of this book, but I will just say that this is a standalone forbidden love set in the explosive world of the NBA. So this does follow two characters, one named Iris and one named August. So starting with Iris, Iris is actually known as this like very strong-willed and headstrong young woman. She is very into sports, specifically basketball. Like, she really knows her stuff. Like, she knows stats, she knows plays, all of that stuff. So she's really trying to break into the sports marketing and like management world, and she really wants to work in that industry, and she's basically like on the path to working in that field, until unfortunately her relationship with her long-term boyfriend Caleb ends up going really south really quickly, and it becomes abusive. On the flip side of that, you have August, who is the male protagonist in the story, and August, actually an NBA player, or at least like an aspiring NBA player. He's really good at, you know, playing basketball, and he is on track to actually becoming like a part of the league and like joining a like really well-respected basketball team. But Iris and August actually meet one night in this bar. You can tell that sparks start to fly between the two of them, but because Iris is in this really shitty situation with her long-term boyfriend Caleb, she knows for a fact that she can never act on her feelings for August, and she also can't tell August why she can't act on those feelings besides the fact that she has a boyfriend. August is trying to do everything that he can to prove to Iris that they are meant to be together, and that he really wants to be the man of her dreams, and the story takes off from there. So I don't want to give anything else away, because it's definitely one of those books where you should just pick it up and read it for yourself. Definitely make sure you look up trigger warnings, because there are so many trigger warnings in this book that I can't even like name them all. So just make sure you look them up, look up reviews before you just dive right in. I will say that domestic violence is a huge theme and a huge like plot point of the story, and Iris goes through a lot of horrific and unimaginable and heinous things at the hands of this monster named Caleb. I will just leave it at that. But overall, I really did enjoy the story and the themes and the commentary that was incorporated throughout the book. So because this book does focus on domestic violence very heavily, there of course is commentary on just how women are not taken seriously again, or not believed, don't have the resources or the means to get out of these situations and to stay out of these situations. There's also just themes and discussions on how to take a step back and to just allow yourself the time to heal before you open your heart up again to anyone else. And I just really loved all of that incorporated in this book. So starting with Iris. Iris is one of my favorite female MCs that I have read about in a long time. I love everything about that girl, okay? I genuinely wish that she was real, because she was just such a compelling and headstrong and captivating and interesting and fascinating character. I loved learning more about her, and I just wanted to learn even more about her even when the book was over, because I loved how she was just so strong no matter what. And even though she was in such a shitty situation, and even though she felt like, you know, life was so bleak and that there could be a possibility that she might not escape this situation alive, she still tried her hardest to fight every single day and to save herself and the people around her from the hands of Caleb. And I loved it. I loved how she literally stared fear in the face and was like, I don't care, I'm going to do whatever I can to take back my life and to take back the control that I once had over it, by any means necessary, period. So I just love the character that she represented. Anybody that reads this book, especially young girls and women that read this book, could really learn a thing or two from Iris's character. I feel like her character, as well as just the overall plot and the themes, just speak to the amount of research and time that Kennedy Ryan has spent into creating this book, because Kennedy Ryan actually sat down with survivors of domestic violence and had them share their experiences, so that can inform her writing for this book. And to me, you could just tell, because Iris's character, as well as again just the situations that she went through, were written with such care and such delicacy that I feel like you couldn't have done it if you didn't sit down with actual survivors and get their experiences and hear their stories. So I really love the fact that she took the time to do that, and she also wrote from the heart, because it took her talent to make Iris a compelling character regardless, you know? Yes, loved her. Can't say enough great things about Iris. Moving on to August, I thought August was a great book boyfriend, and I loved him so much, and he was such a sweetheart. You could tell that he wanted to do any and everything that he can to prove to Iris that he was the man of her dreams and that he was the one for her. And I loved him. Just certain things that he would say to Iris that like only they would understand. It was just so cute. He would say things to her like, I play you at the 5, which is a basketball term, but basically what that means is that he would always keep Iris at the center of his life and his world, and would always make sure that she came first. And I just loved it. I loved it so much. So yeah, I definitely recommend looking into Kennedy Ryan if you guys haven't already. And the last book that I have in this 5-star category is another romance, and it is Through the Storm by Beverly Jenkins. So you guys should already know this was going to get a 5-star, because at this point every book that Beverly Jenkins writes gets a 5-star for me, like period. So this actually follows 2 characters, one named Raymond and one named Sable. So Raymond is actually in the military. So Raymond is actually looking to gain his inheritance because his family is struggling a little bit because the Civil War just took place. So everybody's finances as well as the economy has taken a hit. And so he's looking to gain his inheritance, but in order to do that, he has to marry someone, and then he has to produce an heir in order to receive the rest of it. So because he was scorned in the past by a woman, aka Sable, but because of that, he decides to let his mother choose his wife, because he doesn't really care about love anymore. And he tells his mother straight up, like, you can choose whoever you want. At the end of the day, I'm gonna have me a mistress, because I don't really care about like love at this point anymore. So his mother decides to find him a wife. His mother does find a woman for him to marry, but unbeknownst to Raymond, the woman that his mother has chosen is none other than Sable. And so Sable and Raymond do end up getting married, and you just follow them on this journey of trying to navigate marriage and really trying to get to the root of why Sable betrayed Raymond and why Raymond feels as though he is betrayed. Was it a miscommunication? Was it a misunderstanding? Who knows? The story takes off from there. So I rated this a 5 out of 5 stars because this book was just phenomenal in every sense of the word. I think out of all of the books that I've read by Beverly Jenkins thus far, this is the one that has the most history wrapped up into it, and I loved every single second of it. Like I said earlier in the video, I am a history buff. Like, I love history, and I just love going back in time and like just reading up on certain events that took place. And so because this book is set during the Civil War and after, there is so much wrapped up into this, and so much that I did not know, that I'm so grateful that Beverly Jenkins included in this book. This book was so heartbreaking and so sad, because you could just see how detrimental the effects of slavery really were for people back then, for black people back then, because so many people were separated from their family members and their relatives, and they just had no way of knowing if they ever survived, if they were okay, if they needed help, because of course there were no cell phones or telephones or anything like that of the sort. And because so many black folks were displaced because of the war, a lot of them didn't have houses or addresses, so it's not like you could write a letter to your relative and ask them how they're doing. So there were just so many lost family ties and so many lost connections that were presented in this book, and it broke my heart and it made me tear up a lot, especially with the main character Sable. She had 2 siblings, and you don't find out if her siblings are okay, and that's just how it went. Like, you just don't know if her siblings were okay. She doesn't even know if her siblings were okay, but she thinks about them, but she would say that she thinks about them all the time, and that she just wishes them the best, and she prays that they found peace in their life. And it's just so heartbreaking to know that this was the reality for so many people. So besides all of that and the historical factoids and accuracy of this book, the romance itself was just absolutely beautiful. It was so compelling, so authentic, and it felt so real to me, because Sable and Raymond could stand on their own as individual characters, but collectively they were everything. They were everything. Their love was passionate, steamy, and you could just tell that despite their issues, they still had a deep love for one another, and they were madly in love with each other and just wanted to be with the other person. And I just loved every single thing about their characters, again, individually and collectively. Like I've said before about Beverly Jenkins' books, her female characters all follow the same archetype, where they're very strong-willed, very headstrong, very progressive, very sassy, very funny, and Sable was no exception to that. I loved her character so much. Honestly, even though all of her other characters in the other books that I read, like Night Song and Something Like Love, were fleshed out, I feel like Raymond and Sable, especially Sable, were really fleshed out. Like, I felt like I knew Sable, like that was my homegirl or something. Like, I felt like I knew her, like she was real. It was crazy how Beverly Jenkins really spent her time curating and crafting these characters and making sure that the reader felt invested in them and connected to them. And I felt connected to both of them from the very start of the book all the way into the very end. But love this book. I really feel like Beverly Jenkins books are just comfort reads for me at this point, because I know exactly what I'm going to get. Her books do follow a certain formula, and I have no problem with that at all, because again, I know what I'm going to get, and it gives me that sense of familiarity that I need when going through a reading slump or when I just don't know what book to pick up. I know what I'm going to get each and every time with these books. I have no qualms or regrets about any of them. Right, y'all, and those are all of the books that I read for April. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!